The confirmation today that Kevin Rudd is leaving the post as US Ambassador by the end of March. Don't yet know who will replace him. For more, I'm joined by Nationals leader David Littleproud. David, let's start with the reaction to Rudd's departure. It's a year ahead of when it was meant to be, but the Prime Minister insists Kevin Rudd wasn't pushed.
Oh, well, look, I think the fact he's leaving a year early from a post as important as that raises more questions than it does give answers. But let's get back to first principle. For Anthony Albanese to have appointed Kevin Rudd to the US ambassadorship was a mistake at the very beginning, after he'd made those disparaging comments about President Trump, who wasn't the president yet, but was clearly going to be a presidential candidate, and to still appoint him to a key ally is one that I think showed diplomatic naivety at the start of this whole appointment of Kevin Rudd. And I think that there has been some successes over there, but that's been despite Kevin Rudd. You look at the critical minerals deal that came about and was laid in our lap when China put an export ban on their critical minerals. Of course, the United States and other allies were going to look to us because we sit on the periodical table. So look. This is quite interesting that Kevin Rudd's gone, and it is important that Anthony Albanese doesn't make the same mistake in the next appointment in making sure that, the first rule of anybody that wants to be a diplomat is never to make critical assessment of other world leaders, particularly those in democratic ones, particularly if you want to be an ambassador at some point in the future. And Kevin Rudd, who has diplomatic experience, and so too the long experience of the Prime Minister, to have made that appointment to start with was a huge mistake.
I wonder who you think who should be in the mix to replace Kevin Rudd. This morning, the PM was asked about whether Scott Morrison, as a former PM, would be a good appointment. He didn't say one way or another. The other name that I'm thinking of is Malcolm Turnbull. They worked together when he was PM. He knows Trump well. What would you think if he was someone in the mix?
Well, look, I think what we need to do is have somebody that can not just work with the Trump administration, but with future administrations, whether that be a future Republican or Democratic administration, and that we don't send somebody that's made disparaging comments about the current president or future potential presidents. That's about making sure that we respect their sovereignties, and we'd expect them to respect ours about making commentary about our leaders here in Australia. That's how a democratic society works globally. We broke that by sending Kevin Rudd there. And as I say, it was diplomatic naivety to think that we could just take a punt and hope Trump didn't get elected to send Rudd there, despite the disparaging comments of both him and the Prime Minister previous. So it was arrogance to send him there to start with, but it's important now that we get it right, because our relationship with the United States is critical in not just a trade sense, but in a strategic geopolitical sense, in our national security.